What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And today I'm back with your top bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. And to me, there's two big cards this weekend. The UFC card, which goes down over in the UFC Apex in front of about 12 people. And then Oktagon 62 goes down in front of, I believe they've sold upwards of 58, nearly 60,000 tickets for their event in the Deutsche Bank Park in Frankfurt, Germany. So I have a preview of that. I think it'll be out already before this with Brian Lacey, the commentator over for Oktagon. So I'm going to give you a couple of bets from that, and I'm going to give you 3 bets from the UFC. So we'll go from there, and we'll get into it. First things first, though, look back at last week, and I was gloating last week. We've had probably like 4 or 5 good weeks in a row, not even average weeks, and it all came crashing down with 0 correct bets last week. It's weird. For a while there, all my best weeks were coming during pay-per-views, and for the last couple of pay-per-views, it's not been as good, you know. But anyway, we failed on this one. So the bets from last week, the Pereira fight to be under a round and a half. You know, I think everyone could probably see my logic behind it. It didn't happen. It was a great fight, but it didn't happen. Raquel Pennington, I picked her at -165. I thought she won. You know, I think most people thought she won, but I understand the decision. It was a fair decision, but still in all. Jose Aldo, again, another one. A lot of people thought he won. I didn't know necessarily, but another close decision, which we were a little bit unlucky with. There was one bet last week. What was the bet? It was one. Oh my god! It was. I can't remember exactly what fight it was, but it was one of the fights. Maybe on PFL Europe. It was Conor Hughes, I think, on PFL Europe. We got a bit lucky with, and I think we used up all our luck last week because the next bet was Kayla Harrison win by submission. Actually, that was the Flier. And she almost did. She very, very almost did, but didn't in the end. And they the lids up by decision. You know, the fight ended via an injury, which, you know, is a little bit unlucky, I think, for the bettors out there. So, and the parlay, we went for Span to 2 Penningtons and Pereira. We were 1 away. We would have won the parlay only for that decision as well. So, a tough week last week for the Sheehan Show betting, but hopefully we will be able to turn it around this week. Right, let's get going, and let's start with those couple of bets from Oktagon. And the first bet I'm going for this week is one of my favorite fighters that I've been watching over the last while on Oktagon, and it's remember the name, Mochamed Machaev. And this price has moved around in the last couple of days. I was looking at this. He's actually gone from -150 now in today. I'm just looking at it, literally just refreshed the page. He's -110. He's actually the underdog now against the -120 James Hinden. So that is bet number 1 for the week. And I'll tell you what, when I saw that, I was kind of perplexed by the -150 price. Never mind by the -110. Now, I've watched a load of James Hinden over the years. He's 9-2. Probably had his best win last year when he beat Tobias Harila. It was an arm injury now, but he was doing well in the fight anyway. He's been in there with Paul Hughes, Jordan Vucinic. Okay, he lost both of those fights. Those are the 2 losses in his career, but he's also beaten Josh Onwardy and Kingsley Crawford and others. Whereas at the other side of it, Makachev, he's 14-2. He lost his last one out to Antoine Duke, but before that he beat Makwan Armikani. I watched a good bit of him before that in some of his fights, and this guy is really, really good on the ground. He can strike. He's 7 knockouts in his career as well. He's a very, very, very good fighter. 24 years of age. You know, Hinden is no old guy himself. He's only 26, and I think he's probably coming into the best part of his career right now. He was actually, Brian was telling me that he was actually born in I don't know, it was Frankfurt, but definitely in Germany anyway. So he might, funnily enough, he might be the hometown favorite against the the Oktagon guy, if you want to put it that way. Although he's only had 2 fights in Oktagon versus Hinden fought once in Oktagon, didn't he? He did. Yeah, he fought against Jacob Donald in the April card this year. Come here. I think the difference here is 2 things, and I think the two big advantages that Makhachev will have is, I think his athletic ability. I think his ability to kind of move around and, something against Duke, which didn't stand out as much, but has in other fights. I think that ability against someone like Hinden, which, as we saw in the Vucinic fights and the Hughes fights. Now, of course, those fights were 2 and 3 years ago, respectively. So they're not the be-all and end-all, don't get me wrong. But I think Mochamed will have a similar sort of advantage. And I also think as well, he's well-rounded game and throwing in the wrestling, I think would be a big advantage as well. He's really good on the ground and great at getting guys down there. And I know Hinden he hasn't had really massive problems. Again, we'll say the two guys who beat him are Vucinic and Hughes. And correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't gone back and watched the Vucinic fight in a while, but I think Vucinic did wrestle him an awful lot. And I'm just looking at the record here. He did end up rear naked choking him in the end. So I think that is somewhere he has been, caught before. And I think it might be the way he gets caught again. I look at both of these lads and it's hard to, without doing even a whole lot of analysis, look at one of them and look at the other and who's a better fighter. And hard to say Makhachev isn't that, The one thing I would say is that this is at the featherweight weight class, where Hinden, Hinden has been outsized before, right? And it's funny enough, he's taller than Makhachev, but Makhachev, used to fight at lightweight, coming down now to fight at featherweight. I think that's going to be a big advantage for Makhachev as well. I think Hinden is kind of usually the smaller fighter. And in terms of height, he's not going to be the smaller fighter, he's going to be the taller fighter. Against a guy who's used to fighting bigger fighters at the bigger weight class, as he definitely hasn't fought at a higher level, but he's fought some high level guys. I think it's all pointing in his way, and I think that price is obviously it's very close. But when I looked at that fight, I was thinking Makhachev might be a minus 250, 260 favorite. So you give me minus 110, and I'll absolutely take it. So that's bet number 1 of the week. Mochamed Machaev over in Oktagon. Not to be confused, again, with Mochamed Machaev, who's fighting in Brave at the moment. So, next bet, and let me just get the correct price in this, and I have it. Hafeni Nafuka. Now, this one is moved again. I'm actually looking at it in 2 places here. I have best price. I'll give you best price plus 130. I'm looking at another place here. He's actually even in one place, and he's minus 110 in another place as well. So that price has moved an awful lot. And I'll be honest, I'll be surprised if it's plus 130 by the time this fight happens. He's fighting Arajan Topolaj, who's 7-0 out of Germany, who's had a couple of fights in Oktagon and a couple of finishes in there as well. I actually am picking Hafeni for very similar reasons, right? So he is 6-1 in his career, 5 submissions, unbelievably good on the ground. The only guy he's lost is Predrag Bogdanovic. Now, if you look at this guy, Bogdanovic 16-2, he's only 2 losses, Lawson Keita and Will Brooks. He is an absolute savage. He did well against Keita until he lasted 9 minutes with Keita. It'll tell you how good he actually is as a fighter. But this guy's a savage, and it was too early in his career. It was in the tournament, and I don't think that was the right fight for him. He went out of the Oktagon and got another fight and won there. And I think now there isn't a whole load of tape on Arajan. Obviously, he's very young in his career, and as I said, he's only fought twice in a major organization, and it was just over 2 minutes in those 2 fights. Now, he looked good in those, but is he going to have the same sort of an advantage in those fights as he had in this one? Is he going to be able to work against Hafeni the way he worked in those fights? I'm not too sure. I think Nafuka, having watched him against guys his own experience level and guys who are, not clearly out of that experience level in Bogdanovic, he has wrecked all of them, really. He has taken them down, beating them up on the ground. Let me just look at the record here again. Yeah, 6 wins, 6 finishes, 1 knockout, 5 submissions. He's an absolute beast on the ground, and I think that fight against Bogdanovic, and it was only in March, right? It was only in March, but you would hope he's learned a lot from that and has taken, the learnings, as they call it these days, into his next camp for the fight he just had in May and into this one again. He's been 5 months between the May fight and this one. And for a guy like Hafeni, who is, his age isn't up here, but I believe he's, I don't want to be completely wrong, but I believe he's 22 or 23, maybe. Again, I'll have to double check that, but a young guy and a very, very good fighter and very, very exciting. And I think he'll get the takedown here, and I think he'll get the finish. And I think that plus 130, even if it's even money sort of price, I think that's really, really good, and I'd definitely be looking out for that one this weekend. While we're here, let's touch on a few of the other Oktagon prices. One of the top fights here, Kareem Ingazeg against Patrick Kinsel. Very interesting price here. Ingazeg, the underdog, plus 130, minus 175 for Kinsel. Honestly, when I didn't know a whole lot about Ingazeg coming into it, and I've watched a good bit of Kinsel over the last few years. I think Ingazeg could beat him. Yeah, I think he really could, plus 130. Kinsel, he is a winner, right? He is a winner, and he wins these sort of fights, but that'll only last so long, and I don't know. I might be giving Ingazeg there a plus 130. The other one that sticks out, Anton Rakic, is plus 200 against the minus 275 Max Koga. Now, Anton Rakic at his best versus Max Koga at his best. There's no doubt in my mind that Anton Rakic is the guy who wins that fight. Now, I think he's a guy who's obviously a good fighter, but I don't think he has reached the levels that maybe people thought he would. It's a hometown fight for him as well. Let's not forget that. But again, I might take the underdog there, Anton Rakic at plus 200. So I like that. We've Pavel Langer against Will Fleury then as well. I spoke to Will a few weeks ago, and he's flying on into that one. This is an interesting fight because I feel like they're both kind of bad matchups for the other. I think Will go across the cage and try to take Pavel down. I think Pavel will be looking for the counter as Will comes in. Very hard to land that counter against the kind of a big, strong Mulliker like Tipperary's on Will Fleury, and I think that's the reason for this price. I think the prices here are just about right. Maybe I'd have Will at minus 200, maybe minus 175 or something like that. I'd probably avoid the betting in that, to be honest. But yeah, I would fancy Will to win it. Delidze and Martin, I think that's right, minus 275 for Delidze. There isn't much value there. Eckerding Junkworth, again, 50-50 fight. I'd probably go for the underdog in Junkworth, plus 120. I like him at that price. And in Daniel Torres against Nikos Samanoist. Torres, a very, very good fighter. He's the underdog, plus 120. I watched a bit of Nico coming into the preview, and I was impressed with him, right? But I don't know, is he a complete world beater? And everyone who's beaten Daniel Torres, Parnas, I'd have to look at his record now, but has basically been a world beater. He's only lost to very, very good fighters. I'm not sure, to be honest, if Nico is that or not. So, throw another bit of research into it there. The plus 120 might look good. So, I think there's money to be made. I think that'd be a fair assumption over there. And keep an eye on Oktagon this weekend. It's definitely something that people should be watching this weekend, in my opinion. Right, let's get to our UFC bets. And the first bet from the UFC, I'm gonna go for, and actually my bets have changed because I had Chris Bennett. That fight fell out. There was another fight that fell out too, wasn't there? But anyway, we'll go for the first bet. I'm going for Chidi Njokuani, and I'm going for him to beat Charles Bennett, and he's minus one. Let me just check this again while I'm here. Minus 175. Minus 175. Again, that's a price that's dropped over the last while when I've been looking at it. Minus 188 at one stage, up as far. Yeah, I think that's the highest it went, minus 188. I was looking at it yesterday, it was minus 185, and now it's come down today. The final decision, minus 175. I went for it because of that. Again, somewhat of a price bet. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago as well. I like Chidi Njokuani's game an awful lot, and You look at him, 23-10. He's 35 years of age now. Okay, you know, he was on a 3-fight losing streak before he fought Reese McKee in March, and the guys he was fighting there were all very, very good guys. Right, Rodriguez, I think, probably one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC. Jurev and Olejechuk, again, probably another underrated guy there. But before that, you know, he'd beaten Todorovic, beaten Marc-Andre Barrios, you know, good run-of-the-mill UFC guys. And I think he's faced another one here in Jared Gooden, you know, a guy who will give him a chance in defeat, I think. I know he's a good few submission wins. You know, he's 7 submission wins, 11 knockouts. He's never been submitted himself. He has been knocked out a couple of times in his career. You know, Impa Kasanganay knocked him out in 2022. You know, he lost the Carlton Harris fight decision. You know, and that's the fight to me when I was looking through this, that, you know, Carlton Harris is one of those guys. He beats. I think Carlton Harris has beaten Kasanganay, if I'm not wrong. I'll find that out here in a second, but I think in 2023, losing a fight to Carlton Harris, and he has indeed, is a kind of a bad sign for where you're at. And, you know, he beat Wellington Thurman after that, who's, you know, a good fighter, but I don't think he's the top of the top level. What I just see here is a good, even fight on the feet, to be honest. I think Gooden will pose somewhat of a threat on the ground. If the fight gets to the ground, but getting the fight to the ground, I think might be a little bit difficult for him, because I do think Chidi works well now. If Chidi gets caught once and taken down once, it'll happen over and over, I think. But I'm kind of banking on that not happening. What am I banking on here? I'm banking on this being an even enough fight on the feet, with Chidi having maybe that X factor. You know, we all remember, or I assume some of us remember, his brother as well was a really good striker. And Chidi, you know, of his 15 finishes, 14 have been knockouts. So he has power, he brings it. And that sort of power can not only get knockouts, but also win rounds. You know, the more he fights for the finish, the more he will win rounds. So, yeah, I think Chidi's at 6'3" against a guy like Gooden who's 6'4", you know, even enough. Chidi is a guy who will fight the same way no matter who he fights. I think Gooden is a guy who likes at welterweight, you know, to be the bigger guy, when he doesn't really have that advantage here. Now he's an inch taller, you know, forgive me on that, but it's, you know, pretty much sauce there. I think he might struggle with that as well. And I think Chidi, with the kickboxing background, with a lot of fights in his career against, in this sort of manner, I think, yeah, I'm liking Chidi in that one, and I'm picking him to win there. Right, bet number 2 of the week. This is one I kind of pulled out of nowhere this morning. I was going to go for Taira to win straight up. And we'll get back to that fight in a second. But I've gone for Rodriguez versus Morono to go to a decision at -160. I really think Daniel Rodriguez will win this fight. Morono's last fight against Nico Price, where he lost, I think he looked way off it. Way off it. I think Rodriguez has had 3 tough fights, and I think against Gastelum, he looked way off it. You know, the Ian Gary fight, he ended pretty quickly and kind of took his spot, I suppose. But this fight is a little bit like the fight we had last week, Court McGee against the aforementioned Nico Price. This is on, and it's not necessarily the senior divisions, but this is a well-matched made fight against 2 good guys. The only issue I would have here is, I think Morono, who was fighting pretty well until not long ago, like, I think he might have just had a fight too many. And he's only 34 years of age, but he's 35 fights into his career now, and it's not easy to come on. The only issue I'd have is maybe Rodriguez might get the finish, might knock him out. But again, Rodriguez, you know, out of 23 fights, he's only 8 knockouts. Not the biggest knockout percentage in the world. 47% of his wins have been via knockout. Morono has only been knocked out 3 times in 35 fights, as I said. You know, and those were, you know, who were those against Santiago Ponzinibbio? And it's a long way back then for the rest of them, you know, back in 2014. It was the one before that. I think the fight will be a longer fight. I think it will go to a decision. I think Rodriguez will probably win the decision, but maybe Morono gets a few takedowns. Maybe Rodriguez isn't what he used to be, and maybe he could win it. So I think it'll be, as I said, an even enough fight that'll go along. You look at the last 3 fights for Morono, all decisions. You look at Rodriguez, he lost. It was a decision to Gastelum. Obviously, Gary and Magny are a little bit different, but the 2 before that, Li Zhang and Kevin Lee both went to a decision as well. He went to a decision with Mike Perry Dalby going back to 2020. So there are a lot of decisions thrown in there as well. 8 of his fights have gone to decision. For Morono, even more. 17 of his fights have gone to a decision. So I think that's the good bet there. Right. Our 5th and final bet of the week is from the UFC main event. Brandon Royval against Tatsuro Taira. And this is the Flier. And I'm going for Taira to win the decision at plus 320. Now, again, you look at the stats, and maybe it doesn't tell, the full story in this one. Taira has a lot of finishes, for the 125-pound weight class. Only gone to a decision 4 times. A couple of them in obviously in the UFC. Brandon Royval has a lot more decisions. He's gone to a decision 8 times. He's lost 5 of them. His last 2 have both gone to a decision. And I think the reason I'm going for this to go to decision, and we'll get to Taira winning in a second. I think the higher you get in levels, and you look at it, obviously, Morono has fought now, and he's asked who, Royval and he's asked who fought Morono and Pantoja, and, a couple of fights before that, he fought both of them again, and he fought Kai Kara-France, Tim Elliott. He's been at that level. Taira's just kind of coming into that level. He fought Alex Perez. There was a knee injury there, and before that, you'd maybe struggle to know some of the names that he has fought. And I always think when a guy like Taira is coming into that level and he's going to the next level, and he's fighting 5 rounds as well, there is an adjustment. We always see it. No matter how good the fighter is, invariably there's an adjustment for 5 rounds. Even you could say last week, and maybe this is a bit of a different example, but the main event for Pereira and Roundtree, it was a different sort of fight. Both of them, there's a level of respect as well that these fighters give each other, and they know that this could be a longer one. There's a reason this guy has been fighting for titles or fighting around there as ranked number, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever it might be. Plus, the level of ability is obviously very, very high. And that's why I think he'll go to a decision. I don't think anyone will be going all out here. I think both of them will be, going all out to win, but not all out speed to knock someone out or finish someone early here, like we see maybe in some other fights, or a 3-round fight. So I like the fight to go to decision. Why do I like Taira? I just see something in him when I'm watching him that's different from a lot of guys. And you look at Royval, and Royval's not a guy, against Moreno, he looked very, very good. Obviously, it was a split decision. He could have gone either way, but I think he is a guy who, how would you put it this way? People are always, this might be a bad example, right? But people are always talking about Ronaldo versus Messi. And people say Ronaldo learned how to play like one of the greatest players of all time, and it was handed down by God to Messi, right? I think this is a little bit like that. I think Royval is a really well-shootered, good fighter with some, God-given speed and athleticism. But I think Taira, I suppose the normality is actually a good word, to be honest. The normality in his movements, it's something you rarely see in mixed martial arts. You see it in boxing probably a little bit more because I suppose it's a different sport and maybe it's easier to do than it. But I remember watching a Manny Pacquiao fight once and thinking the way this guy moves is just, you can teach it, but if you teach it to one guy, it's going to look different to teaching to another guy. And I feel like Taira is one of those guys that it comes naturally to him. And I'm not saying he hasn't put in a lot of effort and training and everything into it, but he looks like a chosen one. He really, really does. And that's the reason I think he'll win this. I also think that helps with a speed advantage over someone like Royval, who is very confident in what he does and very good in what he does. But if you're faster than that guy, and the confidence in laying your shots out there and the confidence in landing those shots is a big thing. But if someone is better and more confident and faster at doing it, you have real trouble. So that's why I think Taira will win this, and I'm going for him to win the decision at plus 320. The rest of the card in, anything that stands out there, not a whole lot, to be honest. I like Corey McKenna plus 110. Abdul Razak Al Hassan at minus 160. Let's see what price he is to get the knockout. But plus 100 is the best price you get for that. I think that's that makes a lot of sense. Do you know, one bet I was going to give, but I kind of so I don't want to use a vulgar word here. I backed out of it. Let's put it that way. Pat Sabatini plus 130. I have an awful soft spot for Pat Sabatini. I know Jonathan Pierce is a good guy, underrated guy, but and I think Sabatini lost, didn't he, recently? Coming back from that, I think Pat Sabatini is a better fighter than a lot of people give him credit for, and I like that plus 130. I really, really do like it. Timber Grimbo against Nico Price. He's a favourite there. The Chris, and I think that's just about right. I don't think Nico is what he once was. The Barnett Taffa fight has been cancelled. And let's see if there's a couple more here before we go. Tavares and Park. Think the betting it there is just about right. I actually like Park at minus 175. I think that's a pretty good price now. I like Grant Dawson as well. I think that's a good fight for him against Rafa Garcia. And the main event, Royval and Taira. The straight up price for that, best price on Taira plus, minus 225. Plus 220 best price on Royval. That's a pretty good price, to be honest. The over-unders, let's look at 2.5 rounds, minus 210 for the over, plus 155 for the under. Fight goes to decision, plus 145 best price. That's a pretty good price there. Was that one of my? I can't remember. I think I was just giving you Taira, to be honest, or was I? No, no. Actually, that was the bet I was given before I had to change my bets. Fight goes to decision at plus 145. I love that price. Love that price. Look, if you fancy Taira to get the finish, plus 750 for the knockout, and he's obviously very good on the ground. Only plus 150 for the submission, which is not the best price in the world. But look, we will see how it gets on Saturday night. All right, that's it for me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Let's recap the bets before we go. Machaev minus 110 over an Oktagon, also an Oktagon Nafuka, plus 130. Minus 175 for Njokuani at the UFC. Minus 160 for Rodriguez and Morono go to a decision. And Taira to win by decision at plus 320. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com. Please bet responsibly. And I'll see you all next time.